Hello everybody, we are here for another yarn review. My name is Evelyn of Pink Sheep Design, and today we are talking about Hooked Spesso Chunky Cotton. So I have been doing a lot more reviews on chunkier yarn that can be used for your warmer weather projects. Which means finding cotton and cotton type blends that are larger and heavier weight yarn. Now, this one is more of what I would probably consider to be a macrame style yarn, which is great because it's something I've always wanted to try for crocheting versus obviously I don't do macrame, at least not right now. So I'm actually really excited to see how this works up. I do have one finished project that I can show you guys. I have enjoyed working with it, but this is what it looks like. It is a multi-stranded twist style yarn. This is one of the colors. I have a couple colors I can show you. They have a lot of colors. And if you guys don't know, Hooked is a fantastic brand that has this sustainability, oh, can't say that, sustainability factor. All of their yarns are sustainably sourced. So I'm a huge fan. And then obviously having the cotton and natural fibers is really nice during the warmer weather. So here is a nice sagey lime green color. A lot of their colors are kind of the earth tones, which I really like. And that is the earthy coral color. So they have lots of other color options. There's light pinks, darker pinks, lavender colors. I think they have a darker, like a plum purple, I believe, light blue, but lots of options with this yarn. So let's jump in and look at the details. So this yarn content is 85% recycled cotton and 15% other recycled fibers. So I told you guys, big on recycled fibers, especially from this brand. That is one of their big goals. And let's see, this yarn recommends an 8 to 10 millimeter hook, which is right on par with a lot of other super bulky yarn. Now, this yarn does not actually say that it is a size 6. I don't think that Hooked really does that on their yarn. From what I've seen, they don't usually have it listed out as like a chunky or a super bulky or anything like that. But this one, you can always look at the hook size. That's usually a pretty dead giveaway. The hook range that they request that you have, if it is anywhere from an 8 millimeter to like an 11 millimeter, it's going to usually be in that super bulky range. Now, if you get up above 11 millimeter into like an 11.5, 12 millimeter hook, 15 millimeter hook, those are usually going to be considered the jumbo yarn category. Anything below an 8 millimeter, so let's say a 7 millimeter, 6 millimeter, 5 millimeter hook, those are probably going to be more in your chunky range. So you've got the chunky or bulky, super bulky, and then jumbo. So this is right there in the super bulky range. So I am going to be using a 10 millimeter hook today. Let's see if I've got one handy. This is one of our hybrid 3D printed ergonomic crochet hooks. The reason I chose to use one of our hybrids versus one of our totally 3D printed hooks is because this type of yarn tends to be hard on your hooks. Even if you aren't making super tight stitches, this yarn doesn't have a lot of give. So I like to have more of a workhorse. These are our metal crochet hooks that go all the way down the length of the hook, so they are a workhorse. If you are working with yarn that's going to create a lot of tension, you don't want your hook to end up breaking because you have so much tension on your hook. So that is why today I am going to go with one of our hybrid hooks, and let's flip the camera around and get started. All right, let's get started. Now I'm going to do just a small swatch for you guys so you can see how this yarn works up. Again, this is hard yarn. It's not something that you would be trying to create, let's say, you know, most of the wearable items. Like I am going to try and make a nice vest with this yarn. I think that'd be really cool, but I don't think I would make like a bralette or something. There's just not enough give to the yarn for me to attempt something like that. But as you guys can see, this is one of those yarns that if you cannot stand the idea that a yarn is going to get splitty, this is not the type of yarn you want to be crocheting with. So you can see just how many strands. I have no idea how many strands that is. I have not counted, but it is a lot. So that is one thing you have to keep in mind with this yarn. And it may not be the most pleasant experience at times, especially if you're having to frog the yarn. It's difficult to kind of keep that, the way you would like it to be. So let's go ahead and get started. And you can see like the knot is super chunky. It doesn't really knot in on itself all that well. But again, I have finished a project using this yarn and I'm very happy with how the project came out. So it's not a no for me. It's just going to be very specific projects that I choose to use this yarn for. And I think that's what's important. And that's important with any yarn. It's, you know, you make sure that the yarn matches the project, and just because it doesn't work for one specific project doesn't mean that the yarn is a total no-go. You know, you may just need to find a different project for that yarn. So I'm trying to, hopefully you guys can see how this is working up. Now I'm just using, this is a boy style hook insert that we've got in this one. We do also make the Bates style, but I feel like if you're using a yarn that already has the tendency to be splitty, using a Bates hook can aggravate that. So the inline hooks that are sharper, if you've never seen a Bates hook, they have a much sharper hook edge. And I feel like sometimes that can catch on the fibers and cause them to split even more. Whereas this is a nice rounded hook head, and it makes it easier for me to not split that yarn. So I've only had, I think, one stitch so far where the yarn tried to split a little bit. And you can't even really tell. So that's the good thing. All right, let's do half double crochet. So you guys can see that. This can be a little bit more difficult. When the more loops you have to go through, the easier it is to split the yarn. So I thought it would be nice to show a couple of different stitches. Oh, so far so good. The yarn is behaving on video. I figured at least one of those would try to snag and split. There we go. I have to say the stitch definition is gorgeous with this yarn. If you can take your time and not rush it, you can create some really beautiful items with this yarn. I'm thinking for anyone who likes to make market bags, you know, those bags, I feel like you can have a little bit more. People know that the market bags are a little holier. You know, you're not going to be trying to create this really, really, really super tight tension. It's okay for them to have a little give. But these would create really nice structured market bags. You could easily create a nice rug with this yarn because it is that cotton. You know, there's a lot of things. I have been wanting to make a water bottle holder, and I feel like this could be the perfect yarn for making a nice chunky water bottle holder. Go. Now it also has this tendency to spin on itself. So you guys can see how this created this spin structure on its own. It'll get that way, but it has not caused me, it hasn't been enough for me to get really frustrated and have to like cut the yarn, because, you know, once it starts spinning, you can't really unspin it down the spool because then it's on here. But like I said, even though it has a tendency to do that, it has not caused me enough of a headache to give up on this yarn. This is one of those yarns where I was determined to love it. I think it's a really neat consistency. I have a feeling that any type of macrame yarn that is this size is going to work up similarly to this. And again, it's not going to be perfect the perfect fit for every project. But look at that. I mean, I think it's really pretty. I think it makes a nice stitch definition. Again, this is using a 10mm hook. You can see that there. You know, I have a tight stitch. I tend to crochet very tightly. So, you know, if you're a looser crocheter, you could probably jump down to like an 8 or a 9mm hook with this yarn. I wouldn't go too much smaller than that, just because it's going to be tough on your hands. You know, you could even go up if you're making market bags where you don't mind them being a little holier. You could go up to like an 11.5mm hook or a 12mm hook to create some of those items. I do want to try and create a cardigan using this yarn. So it would be, I'd probably use a 14 or a 15mm hook to create more of a lacier feel. And let's do that really quick. Let's see what this would look like. And I'm going to show you guys how this frogs. So anytime you're frogging difficult yarn, I just take my time. So don't force it. You know, if you hit a snag, try pulling from different directions instead of trying to force it. That tends to be the golden rule for frogging temperamental yarn. And, you know, I wouldn't even call this super temperamental. Again, I've actually really enjoyed working with it so far. So this is one of our 15mm 3D printed crochet hooks. I'm going to use this one. We're going to do the same style of swatch. We're going to start off with a row of single crochet, and then we'll hop to a half double crochet, and we're going to see how this hook does, because this hook, our 3D printed full 3D printed hooks are an inline style. So you guys can see this is very different from the more tapered style hooks. So I'm interested to see if I have any issues with this snagging, because it is more of that inline style. So let's do our single crochets back across the chain first. So far, no issues with snagging. Again, it's going to be a little bit easier to work with this yarn with the larger hook because there's more space to pull through these loops, if that makes sense. You know, you're not working with such teeny tiny loops trying to pull the yarn through. You have a little more space to work with. All right, the last one. Yep. All right, so I'm going to turn my work now, and now you can really see what I mean by this yarn twisting on itself. See how it's creating these loops? But like I said, it never got to a point, and I had to frog a few projects before I figured out what I wanted to make with this. So I've had to frog it a few times, and it does not ruin the yarn. I was able to just continue working with it. The yarn got a little more difficult to work with the more I frogged it, because it was harder and harder for it to keep its twist, which when it, you know, loses its twist, then it's easier to split. So let's do a few of these in slow motion for you guys so you guys can see. Again, this is a 15mm hook, half double crochet, and really no splitting, luckily. I mean, this has been, this yarn has really been very well behaved for this video. So, but I don't want you to think that it's never going to happen. It definitely occurred quite a few times while I was working through my last project, and I just had to have patience. All right. That is what it looks like with a 15mm hook. And see, this is actually a nice feeling fabric. I mean, it's not super structured. It's got quite a bit of flow to it. So I think that this could make a really cool spring cardigan. So if you make like a short sleeve or sleeveless vest style cardigan, I think this could be really nice. Now, I don't know how it's going to wash. That's something that I'm going to have to test. And I'll go ahead and show you guys what I created with this yarn. Let me lift the camera up for you. All right. Let's do that. And I'll show you guys. So I decided to make some pot and pan protectors. So if you are stacking your pots and pans together, this goes in between each one so that you don't scratch up your pans. So I made 3 different sizes, and I have these 2 here. This is the smallest size. This is the next size up, and then I have an even larger size that I made with these. I used I believe a 9mm hook for these, maybe a 10. Either one would work. But I love these. You can see here I had a little bit of splitting. I did half double crochet on these, which can make it more difficult at times. And I had to frog this quite a few times to get the stitch count right to create these. I still have to weave in my ends, which I'm not super excited about, but at least because you can split this yarn, I could kind of separate this into 2 halves, and I could tie knots into each other. So it'll be easier to weave them in because I can split them and then tie a knot to weave in each end. But perfect for this kind of home decor stuff. But again, I do really want to try to create a wearable. If you guys have followed me for a while, I try to make every super bulky and jumbo yarn into a wearable of some sort. So that will be happening. But for now, be on the lookout. This pattern will be releasing probably within the next couple of months. And you'll have a 3-pack of pot and pan protectors using this kind of style macrame cotton cord. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you don't want to miss any of my yarn reviews, tutorials, or other yarny shenanigans. And until next time, happy hooking!